So, Mr. Showalter, when I Googled you, one of the first things that I saw was something called the Michael Showalter Showalter. Care to explain yourself?
Um, the Michael Showalter Showalter was a Charlie Rose type talk show. And my character, Michael Showalter, was a very surly and kind of arrogant, horrible interviewer. And it was quite short-lived, but we had a nice little run of guests, and I'm really proud of it.
No, I thought it was hysterical. I'm waiting for
Yeah,
it to like come to Fox or NBC or something along those lines
I
because it made
wish. I wish.
it made me laugh so hard. I had no idea it existed. But what we want to do is focus on your very busy year. You do know that you could take it down a notch and not take on so many different things in a fiscal year.
I'm
I mean, are
trying
you?
to make up for lost time, basically. Yeah.
I mean, I mean, did you realize this past year was going to be so involved when the year started, or just things kind of fell that way?
Things fell that way. I knew, I knew that I was going, we finished shooting The Eyes of Tammy Faye literally like right before the pandemic. So we finished shooting that movie at the very end of the year and then started editing the movie. And then during the editing of The Eyes of Tammy Faye is when the pandemic started. And so I think we pitched the Shrink Next Door on the very first day of like now people are doing their meetings on Zoom. It was like Monday morning, and it was like, hey, there's this new thing called Zoom. You're going to pitch a show that way. So we pitched that, and I knew that that was a project I was really excited about. And then as I was finishing that, shooting the Shrink Next Door is when the Dropout approached me about coming and doing that. And so I literally went right from the Dropout, I'm sorry, from the Shrink Next Door right into the Dropout, because they sort of, one came as the other one was finishing. I came into the Dropout kind of late in that process. They'd been working on it for a while. As everybody knows, there were different elements attached at different points. And so Amanda Seyfried and I kind of came in close together. And then all of a sudden the show had life. And then in between the Shrink Next Door and the Dropout, I also squeezed in directing the pilot for I Love That For You. And so it was a very, and then actually as we were shooting the Dropout, this film that I shot that's coming out this fall called Spoiler Alert with Jim Parsons was greenlit at Focus, and I went right from the Dropout to New York and shot a feature. And then I said, I need to stop directing for a little while so that I can see my family and get some rest. And of course, my body completely like crashed. I had to have back surgery, and like my foot is all messed up. And so like I paid a price.
I'm almost exhausted listening to that
It's been
explanation.
crazy. It's been crazy.
I mean, this is an odd question, but it's the first thing that popped in my head. And I got lots of things I want to touch on here, but it's the first thing that popped in my head is there one that you're particularly most proud of for a particular reason? Because you're going from, let me explain, you're going from a film that you had an Academy Award winner. you, you have the Dropout with performances that will get mentioned and nominated more than likely by the Television Academy here in short order. Jim Parsons, that feature is getting a lot of buzz. The Shrink Next Door, that's also going to get some buzz for come Emmy time. So, I mean, is there one that you're particularly most proud of?
I'm proud of all of them. The Jim Parsons, I'm really excited about, and I'm not going to talk about that one as much just because people haven't seen it yet. And so in a way, I want to put that one to the side. That was an amazing experience. I'm so excited for people to see that film. The Dropout, what happened with The Eyes of Tammy Faye is one of the great highlights of my career. For Jessica to win the Oscar was just a true highlight of my whole life. It was just very validating. I've been in, I didn't have a career as a director until well into my 40s. So this isn't like something I've been doing my whole life. You know, I've been bouncing around the industry, sort of trying to get my feet under me for a while. And I think it was just incredibly, extremely powerful moment for me to see that happen for her. And I was so happy for her, but also just proud myself. The working on The Shrink Next Door, I mean, I've worked with Paul Rudd a lot. I mean, working with Will Ferrell has been something I've wanted to do my whole life. Catherine Hahn, same thing. So working with them was so wonderful. But The Dropout was really special because The Dropout was one of these things where you had all of these different creative elements. Liz Merriweather and her writers, Amanda Seyfried, all the other incredible cast members, all the different production. It was a very big production in terms of the scope of it. And it was really something where everybody kind of brought their A game. And it wasn't easy. It wasn't the most fun experience. I mean, and it was quite a lot of fun, but it was so much about the work. And I felt as a director, I felt that I really made it a priority to try to execute what I believed Liz Merriweather's vision was for the show, rather than to just sort of put here's what I want to do and that's what we're going to do. I really tried to deliver for her. And it seems like there was, so it's really exciting when something like that, all these different pieces come together and everybody brings something really special and unique to a project. And then to have the audience and the critical reviews, to have all of those things line up, it's not every day that you get something like that, where something like that happens.
When you have a piece like The Eyes of Tammy Faye and The Dropout, and you see these performances that you could just tell are on another level, as a director, do you just step away and let them do what they're doing, or do you give them encouragement? I mean, it's one thing to have one performance that's amazing, but to catch two is like catching lightning in a bottle. Because
well, I'd like to think, and I know you're not saying this, I'd like to think that I had something to do with it. And so it isn't catching lightning in a bottle. It's actually like, maybe maybe it's not a coincidence that
no.
Both of them, yeah. And I think for me, it's creating an environment for the actors where they feel not only safe in taking risks and in going deep into the work, but also that's what we're all doing. We're all aiming high. We're trying, we're not here we're here to try to make something really, really special and really, really great. And I try to bring that spirit to work every day, that like, we're all here to try to make something that will stand the test of time and that we can all be really, really proud of. And that it's in a creative environment where that kind of expression is encouraged, it's safe, and that I'm here to collaborate. I'm here to work with you and that I'm not here to have you do to sort of be the puppet master. I'm here to help you get out of you the performance that you have to give. And so it's a very symbiotic relationship that I feel like I try to have with actors when I'm working with them, which is like, we're all here for the same reason. Let's figure out how to get there.
But then there's the other wrinkle of taking on a story that's been in the news, that has been talked about over and over. I mean, there are a lot of, what's the word, potholes you could fall into creatively, going over a line, not capturing the essence of the story. I mean, I have to imagine the prep for The Dropout had to have been so extensive. I mean, like, definitely. I don't even think I could quantify how extensive it was.
And I think that a lot of that is Liz Merriweather and the scripts. I mean, they had great, when I came onto the project, they'd already written the majority of the scripts, and they were great. You know, like it's a great feeling as a director when you read a script and you're like, this is great. I have no notes, you know. And I did have a few notes, but not too many. Like there was a vision there. There was this incredible sense of humor. There was this. It felt very personal, and yet the story felt very big and very small at the same time, and it felt like it was getting at the heart of who these people were in a way that was very compelling. And so I really credit the writers and Liz for doing that. And then I think, again, as in sort of when we get in there and we're working and it's every day, and it's just sort of like everyone's sort of bullshit radars are up, which is like, did we get the scene? Did we get the line? Did we get it? And if we didn't, what do we need to change? What do we need to adjust? How do we, maybe you should be sitting down, not standing up. Maybe we're doing the scene the wrong way. Maybe we need to, and so there would be, and it's my job as a director is to kind of push away the outside elements that are looking at their watches and going, we need to move more quickly. We got another scene to shoot. Like those are sort of the things that come into it, is like the actors need to feel like they're not worrying about that. And so part of the challenge of a big show like of The Dropout is to get everybody sort of working to this place of like, if we go a little long because we needed to figure this scene out, we're going to have to, then we're all together going to figure out how to make up that time. And I know that may sound sort of silly and technical, but that is part of it too, is that like, you can't move on unless you can't move on until you feel like you have it, until it's right. And sometimes that creates a ripple effect. And that's part of the project is and so that's what I mean when I say everybody brought their A game. The line producers, the unit managers, everybody was on their toes from the beginning to the end on that show.
But you have to have the right director. I mean, not to give you too much credit, but let me give you too much credit. I mean, you could have the best writing, you could have the best everything, but if they don't have you behind at the helm, pushing it, then the project's going to fall on its face.
And I think it's about trust. I think it's about trust. Everybody, because I am in that position, I am on the day when we are actually shooting the show. I am the center of the wheel. Yeah. And I think that it's about trust. The actors need to trust me. The production people everyone needs to trust that I'm steering the boat in the right direction. And that is where, if I'm good at my job, then that means people trusted me. And so that means I'm doing my job somehow the right way, because there's a lot of things that are coming up there's a lot of like making it up as you go along when you're shooting, because there's so many unknowns. And so I think in that situation, you do need someone in my role that is, hopefully everybody trusts, has the bigger picture in mind, and is going to steer the ship to dry land, basically.
Well, no, that's a great way to put it. But I have to imagine, through all the preparation and all the elements you had to kind of get going in the right direction, there had to be one thing that stood out to you in The Dropout. And since we're focusing on these things in particular, and the Shrink Next Door, the episode you directed, that you knew you had to nail. The four. I apologize. I'll fix that. That you knew you had to nail. So, what were those moments that you knew you had to nail in each project?
I think for in The Dropout, the difficult thing, the sort of the tone part that was most difficult that was most important, was there's a very subtle comedic tone to The Dropout, and it was very important to capture that tone in the right way, so that it was funny but not goofy, that it wasn't quite satire or farce or something like that. But there's a lot of comedy in The Dropout, and that the comedy needed to feel grounded, but also it's a little bit idiosyncratic. And so for me, I think that was the one element of The Dropout that was probably the most kind of rigorous. in my approach and involve the most amount of like really talking to Liz Merriweather to really understand like, okay, this is how we want to do, and what does that require of me in terms of getting the actors to a certain level of believability, but also looseness and sort of like all of those things. Shrink Next Door, I mean, I think when you're, working with comedic actors like Will and Paul, it's almost the opposite. It's almost how to make them feel real, how to make them feel, how to kind of make you forget that they're who they are, and to have you not be thinking all the time, oh my God, I'm looking at Ant-Man and Ron Burgundy or whatever, but that I'm watching these performances and these human beings that these actors are portraying, and what does that require of me as a director. And so it's always, every project is challenging in one way or another, but those sort of stand out.
One particular shot in each of those projects that you just love and think about to this day.
When you ask me that, I mean, immediately jumps to mind is a scene in the Dropout on the water. She goes and she sees Larry Ellison, and it was really important to me that we be out on the water, that we be out in the middle of the ocean. Would have been a lot easier to shoot that scene with the boat docked, if the yacht was on the dock, and we could have gotten more equipment on the boat and everything. But I really wanted to feel the wildness and the kind of the sense of adventure and the sense of possibility that being out on the open water would give us. And so I love that shot. We're behind Elizabeth. Larry Ellison is at the very tip of the boat, and he's talking to her, and he's sort of got his hands out, and you just see the whole ocean behind him. So I would say that stands out for the Dropout. And then when I think of the Shrink Next Door, I just think of the room, the shrink's office. And we used a lot of close-ups where Will or Paul's face were perfectly centered in the frame. And it's not something I'd ever done before. It's a sort of a technique I'd never used before, because it's not a very realistic looking shot. It's a very, it's a very cinematic frame when you center when you do a close-up where the person, it's a very Wes Anderson typically does it, and I'm sure there's a lot of other directors as well. But it really, I thought, made me fall in love with the characters, especially Will Ferrell's character. There's just some close-ups of Will Ferrell's character where you just see his expressions, and you see the sadness in his character's face, and that those it was, for me, it was some very powerful close-ups of Will in particular.